Hey guys, welcome back to Quilts Bloom at Dawn. It's Saturday, so my video comes out, but I can tell you what I'll actually be working on today, and that is my jelly roll quilt for National Jelly Roll Day, and I hope you're making a jelly roll quilt as well. On the last video, if you missed it, I encourage you to check it out. I shared a number of free jelly roll quilts, some of my favorites that I've downloaded, and they were all free on Fat Quarter Shop's website. Some of the manufacturers also have some. So if you're looking for inspiration, ideas to use a jelly roll, I encourage you to check those out. Not only do they have great jelly roll patterns, but they have lots of free patterns that I encourage you to take advantage of. I've made several of them, so I definitely encourage you to take advantage of some of those free patterns that are available to us. So stay tuned for the next video. I'm hopefully gonna have my jelly roll quilt put together. I chose a pattern that I think is pretty simple. It's the Strippy Spools pattern that Kimberly Jolly's been doing on Fat Quarter Shop recently. I admired it, and I remember thinking I don't have time for this now, but I want to set that aside for National Jelly Roll Day. So I actually have the summertime collection, the one that she featured on her videos. I actually got some of that fabric because I did not allow myself to buy any more of this Camille Ross Kelly's summertime collection because I knew I was putting so much emphasis on Nantucket Summer, but this allowed me to get at least a little piece of this collection as well. One of the main quilts that we've been working on recently has been the Blue Willow Quilt, which is found in the Celebrate with Quilts book by Lissa Alexander and Susan Aki. If you don't have it, I encourage you to get it. It's a great book full of really great patterns. The one in particular that we've chosen, though, is the Blue Willow Quilt. So if you're just joining in, we started out by making just these mosaic blocks that were featured in the book. And then later in the book, she actually takes those mosaic blocks and she actually makes a whole quilt out of them. So during the last video, we actually made the blocks using the mosaic blocks that we had already made. We bordered those out. So that's what we were working on our last video. And today we're going to make the other block that's included in that quilt, which is the patchwork block. So this is what we'll be making today. This pattern is really just these two blocks repeated. In addition, we'll make, we already made these strips, which are basically the same thing. That's the top piece of our border here. We made 10 extra sashing pieces. I call it sashing, but honestly, it's almost more like a border. It goes around the top, bottom, and sides of the quilt, and it kind of just finishes the look. All right, and then today, in addition to making these patchwork blocks, we're going to make extra of these top portions here, and that'll also offset these. So basically it'll, I don't know if I can do it like here, I'll do it like this. So it'll go like this all around the quilt to kind of finish it out. If you look closely, you'll be able to see it. So that's what we'll primarily be working on today, is we'll be making one of these patchwork blocks together, and they're actually pretty fun. There's no folded corners or anything. There are a couple small pieces, but it actually goes together pretty quickly, so we'll have fun with this one. I also finished up the Hearth and Home. I put the blocks together, so I'll actually be able to show you the actual pieced top of the quilt. I don't have it basted yet, but I'm hoping to do that, and I'm already beginning to think of ideas for how I want to quilt this one, because again, I do all my quilting here on my sewing machine, so I'm not sure what I'm going to do for this one. I'm still kind of thinking. I did show it on my design board during the last video, but it was still pieced, and I was still trying to think through kind of, you know, how you play with blocks to kind of get that look you want. By the way, when you do that, I encourage you, when you're looking at it, take a few pictures, whether you have it on a bed, on the floor, on a wall. Take pictures of it, and then go look at the pictures to really get that overall view. I'm always amazed. I'll think I like a quilt that I'm working on. I kind of like the layout, and then if I take a picture of it and look at it kind of again, just looking at it as a whole like that, you see it differently. So I do encourage you to do that just to get a different perspective on what you're making. Okay, so we'll take a look at that. The other thing I wanted to talk a little bit more about today, and for those that have been patiently waiting, it's happening. We are actually starting our Galway Bay pattern. For those that are just tuning in, that quilt is featured right here on my ladder in the Shoreline fabrics, but I've been excited for the Nantucket Summer collection by Camille Ross Kelly. I really wanted to make this again with that Nantucket Summer, and I plan to incorporate some lighthouse blocks into this quilt. So we'll talk a little bit more about this in detail, what I'm actually going to be using. Then on the midweek video, we'll go ahead and get all of our fabric cut for this project. So I encourage you, if you don't have the pattern, you definitely want to go ahead and get your hands on one of these and go ahead and gather whatever fabrics you plan to use. And so we'll be talking a little bit more about this a little bit later in the video. But right now we want to go ahead and spend some time talking a little bit more about our patchwork blocks. That's what we'll be working on today. So for these patchwork blocks, we'll be making a total of 17 of these blocks, and we'll be making 14 of our little sashing units or border units, whatever you want to call them, that'll go around the outside of, it's really more of a border. So we'll make a total of 14 of these. So I've gone on ahead from my starched fabrics, I've gone on ahead and cut all the pieces that I'm going to need, and just to go over them with you. So I didn't mention this on the last video, but where it says C and H, these are actually, you just have 2 of each of these squares. These are actually going to be used at the very end. They are in the 4 corners of the quilt. So that's what these are. We'll basically be making half square triangles, and we'll use these at the very end. So go ahead and pick whatever fabrics you want for your C and H. And then really you can just set these aside. We'll be working on these at the very end. All right, but what we do need is, so for our center squares, you need 17 Ds. And again, these are just whatever choices you want for your backgrounds. Again, these are all our patchwork background blocks. So I've selected, again, just from my collection that I had, some of these were Nantucket Summer, some of these were some Shoreline prints that I had, some were just some extras that I had. This was an extra that I had on hand. This was a previous Camille Ross Kelly collection here. So I have just a variety of different, primarily white with a little bit of the blues mixed in to use as my patchwork block backgrounds. So you'll need, again, total of 17 of these. And as far as the dimensions, I won't share that because, again, that's part of the pattern, but you'll want to go ahead and cut it per the pattern directions, but you need 17 of these. And then the E rectangles, these are going to go, again, on either side here. Actually, they're on all sides, so it's not just there. It's the four sides. And again, it's also here on our sashing piece. So you'll need a total of 68 because we'll need 4 of these rectangles for each of our blocks. So 4 times 17 equals 68. And then we'll also need an additional 14 of these for those border sections that we're making. And again, you can choose whichever fabrics you want to use for your sashing sections. I just did a variety of them. So mine are going to be, my border's going to be pretty scrappy around the edge because I did, like I said, a variety of these. In addition, we have these little squares here. And again, this is what's going to make the 2 squares in each of these corners. And then again, on our block, you see the 4 corners. So that's what these F squares are going to be for. So it's 4 per block times 17. So again, we're 68 of these. And then for our sashing or border sections that we're making, we need 2 per border section So we actually need 28 for that. So we're cutting a total of 96 of the F pieces. 96. Then the little tiniest piece that we had to cut. So this is our G's. Something so small, these little G squares, can really make a difference on a quilt. Look at how it just makes this block so much prettier by having, again, those little tiny squares. I just love that. I really like the look of that. So for our little G's, then you'll need 4 per block plus 2 for our border strip. So just like on our F squares, we need a total of 96 of our little G's. As far as our navies, I opted to go for using one single print for all of my navy on both the patchwork block as well as bordering out the mosaic blocks. Now I used a variety of navy prints in my actual mosaic block, but to border it out, I only use this one navy print, and also I'm doing the same thing for my patchwork blocks. So you don't have to do that. Feel free if you prefer to have a more scrappy look. I think that would really look beautiful too. It's just a decision that I made for mine. Now the pattern actually says to use a navy solid, but again, I did opt for just this geometric, it's like a grid, kind of a diagonal grid. That's what I'm using for mine, and that is from the Nantucket Summer collection. So whatever you decide to use for yours, you'll want to go ahead and cut for the J strips. And again, the J strip, just to show you where it is, it's 4 per block. Here's our 4 narrow strips, and then 1 for the border strip. So for 4 per block times 17 blocks, we need 68, plus our 1 for our sashing, that would be times 14. So we need a total of 82 of our J's. 82 J's. All right, next is our K. Our K is just this smaller little rectangle, and there's a lot of these, actually 8 per block. We're gonna actually need to cut for the blocks themselves, 8 per block times 17, that's 136. Then for our borders / sashing pieces, we need 4 of them. So again, right here, so 4 times our 14 sections, so that's gonna be 56. So we end up with a total of 192 of our Ks, 192. And that is all we're gonna need. So if you haven't already, I encourage you, go ahead and cut all the fabrics that you're gonna need. I did go ahead and get all of mine cut. Whew, that was fun. But I did end up having just enough of this fabric to finish this out. I'm gonna go ahead and adjust the camera so we can actually put a block together and see exactly what we're doing. And we'll go ahead and get one of these blocks made up. All right, I have everything I need to go ahead and make a single block. So we're gonna start with our D. That's our big rectangle. That's gonna go right in the center. So we've got that placed. All right, and then around it, we're gonna go ahead and take 4 of our J strips. Okay, and then our little G's, those are our tiniest little squares. We're gonna put those in these 4 corners here. Next, we're gonna go ahead and take our E strips, and those are gonna go on the 4 sides, right above or right next to the navy. All right, I adjusted it a little bit so to make sure you can see. Okay, for our K, those are the little rectangles in the navy. We'll need a total of 8 of these. While we need 4 of most of these items, we actually need 8 of these K pieces. We're actually putting 4 on each side, just like this. Isn't it neat how it just kind of goes together almost like a puzzle? Which is funny, I don't like putting puzzles together, but I love making quilts. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and finish it out with our 4 of our F squares. I like that better. All right, and that is how we make this block. The patchwork block, just like this. And it, like I said, it goes together pretty quickly. Now, in addition to this, you see this top section right here. That is how we make our sashing pieces. Matter of fact, the easiest way to do this is to just go ahead and make this unit, make this unit. That is essentially the top and bottom of our patchwork block, but it also is what's used as the border pieces, border sashing pieces to make this. So when we finish that, this is what it's going to look like. We're going to make a total of 17 of these patchwork blocks, plus we're going to make an additional 14 of these, just these units right here, and these will be used to border out around the quilt at the end. So let's go ahead and begin by getting this sewn up. We'll actually go ahead and just sew this top section first. And what I like to do, I just go ahead and put right sides together, and I'll chain piece this. I'll do the same here. Matter of fact, while I'm at it, I'm going to do the same thing at the bottom. Right sides together. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and do this as well. We'll do the same thing to the top. And since we're chain piecing, why don't we go ahead and do this to the sides? I love it when I can do it like this. It comes together so quickly. Okay, so I'm going to take this to my machine. I don't know that I will pin. If I feel like I need to, I will. But if for example, something this small, I definitely won't. And it's just a straight, so I'll just run that through, no problem. Something like this, I might put a couple pins in it, but just depends. This is starched fabrics. I think I can put that through and hold it together, no problem. But if I'm worried about it, I'd always rather pin to be safe as opposed to having to rip out because it's not straight. So whatever you feel, do whatever you want to do on that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get all of this chain pieced. And I will go ahead and press it as well because I think it's going to be hard to even show you until it's pressed. But I did want to mention, as far as pressing, on all of these, I'm going to end up pressing towards the navy on all of these pieces. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get this sewn together and pressed, and then we'll take a look. Okay, so I'm back, and I've just put all my little puzzle pieces back together. So again, our center, now we just have the 2 side units, and then we have this now broken down into 2, 4, 5 pieces. That's going to be for the top and the bottom. So now I'm going to go ahead and chain piece again. This time I'm going to go ahead, and again, I pressed everything towards the navy. So this time when I turn this like this, see how it's going to nest nicely right there? So I'll go ahead and do that on these 4 pieces. Just turn those right sides together. Okay, and then You can, if you'd like, go ahead and sew this together if you want to. You can go ahead and do that now. That section will be ready to go then, because we'll do this as a unit. So it'll be this is a unit, the bottom is a unit, and then the center is a unit. So if you want to go ahead and get that, that's what I'll probably do, is go ahead and sew this together as well. So we'll be back after I get this done and pressed. By the way, on this, I will definitely go ahead and pin, since I'm wanting to make sure these seams come together nicely. So I do poke my pin to make sure that it hits the seam on both sides. So definitely at least one pin. If you're worried about it, you can also, if you want to go ahead and add a second pin. Again, pinning is always a good thing. It's never a bad thing. It's just you want to take the time. But anytime you've got seams coming together, I always add pins. All right, so I have my center unit sewn together, and on the center section, I went on ahead and pressed it in towards, again, the navy strip. The center unit is done. So we're down to our top and bottom. We just have to sew these 3 pieces together. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Again, I'm going to align it and pin it just like I mentioned before. But I did want to say, when we press this, since this is pressed going out, we're going to make sure we press this going this direction. So both for the top and the bottom, we want it going towards the center, since our center unit is going out. So I'm going to go ahead and get these 3 sections sewn together, and for both the top and the bottom, and get it pressed, and we'll take a look. So our patchwork block is down to our final 3 sections, our top, our middle, and our bottom. Now remember, this is the actual unit. We're going to make 10 extra of these. We'll be using these on the top, bottom, and sides to kind of create a border along with this other block. It'll go like this all around the quilt. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get these 3 sections sewn together, and then we'll take a look. The final look at our patchwork block. Make a total of 17 of these, and then again, our little border units, we're going to need 10 additional of these. So make this as scrappy as you want. You notice I did all of mine in the same fabric. I do plan to do that. So each one of my blocks are going to have all the same fabric included with it. But you don't have to do that. You could actually make it more scrappy. That's just my preference. So again, total, we should have 17 of these. So definitely go ahead and try to work on these, and on the next video I'll definitely be showing the process of laying it out on the design board. This is going to be so pretty. I cannot wait to see this one come together on the design board. It's going to be beautiful, offset with those mosaic blocks. Oh my goodness, it's going to be pretty. So anyway, we'll go ahead and just work on these. I think that'll keep us busy for a while. Okay, so now for a look at the Hearth and Home. It's really not that much different from when you saw it the last time, but I did piece all the blocks. So this is the final layout. So all the blocks have been put together. You just attach, it's 3 blocks across, and you do that down 4 rows. I know you don't see the bottom row, but anyway, I'm pleased with the final look. I guess I really was focused more on the stars and the white space, that I really didn't think about what this unit was creating, and I really like the way that came out. It definitely, just with all those different blues and a little bit of that green mixed in, I like that scrappiness, which I don't typically go too scrappy, so this is definitely a little bit of a departure for me, but I do like the way this came together. Probably because I love the colors and the collection so much, so what's not to like, right? But anyway, so this is the Hearth and Home. So the next time you see this, I will have this definitely basted, and I may go ahead and quilt it before you see it again, because really basting, it's not much to look at. So I'll probably go ahead and quilt it first and then have a final look at this. So hopefully I'll have that in the next week or so. Just depends on how much time I have to devote to it, especially with all these other projects going on, including now the jelly roll quilt that I'm working on. And then of course I'm still busy making all my patchwork blocks, so I definitely have some work to do on that. But definitely this is still high priority. What I end up doing most of the time is I go ahead and finish out several tops like this, and then I'll baste and quilt. I'll just take a week and that's all I'll do is baste and quilt several at a time. So likely that is what I'll do this one as well as the Blue Willow. And then if I finish up the strippy spools, I'll go ahead and do that one as well. That's what I'll be working on. I'm definitely excited to see this one come together. And if you have any recommendations on how you think I should do free motion, again, I do it on my machine. But if there's something that you think would look really good, I'd love to hear your ideas. Because there's already a lot of geometric shapes going on, I was thinking maybe the walking foot wouldn't look as good. I don't know, it might, but that's really my go-to. I tend to do a lot of using my walking foot and just doing those echoed lines, either horizontal, vertical, or diagonal. I love that look, and it's easy for me to do, so it's my go-to. But I do like to do some free motion in there as well, so I haven't decided for sure whether I'm going to do free motion on this one or go back to my trusty echoed lines. So definitely let me know your thoughts. What do you think would look best on this quilt? The last thing before we close today, I mentioned that I was going to spend a little bit more time talking about Galway Bay, because that is next up on the docket is our Galway Bay pattern. So this Galway Bay pattern, if you're making it the size listed here on the pattern, it comes out as a square, 74 inches squared. I haven't decided personally if I'm going to do that, or I'm considering actually making this one king size for my bed. So I may end up going bigger. So I haven't decided for sure on this. Definitely, if you are planning to make it larger than what is listed, you will definitely need more fabric than what they list. So they actually say you can make this with a layer cake, and that is true. I've made them with a layer cake before. However, it does not allow for any kind of room with starching. You would definitely, if you're planning to starch, you would want to go ahead and probably get a fat quarter bundle, would probably be your safest route. And then whatever you're going to use for your border, I would just buy some yardage of that for sure. The other thing I plan to do is to incorporate some lighthouse blocks into this pattern. I've done that before. Matter of fact, I'll show a picture of the one I've done before, the one I made for my sister. I mentioned this previously on a video, but I was making this quilt for my sister. I had already made this one for me, and my sister fell in love with it. She wanted really the identical one, so I made one for her for Christmas. But as I was starting to make it, my little niece was nearby when I was getting started, and knowing how much my sister loves lighthouses, made the comment, too bad there's not lighthouses. And so for the moment she said that, all I could think about was I have to make lighthouses in this quilt. And I turned to Etsy and found a pattern available, and I love this pattern. It's easy to make, and the pattern lists multiple sizes that you could make an individual block, or you can make a whole quilt. Include the link in the description to that Etsy pattern. I highly recommend it. I'm also going to include a picture here so you can see. Now again, the picture here that she has, it's just a paper version, so you don't see her blocks made up. But on the quilt that I showed previously, you can actually see where I've used her pattern to actually make the lighthouses. So I do plan to incorporate that into mine, because after I made that for my sister, all I could think about was, now I want lighthouses. So I definitely plan to incorporate a few lighthouses, probably 3. If I end up going king size, I'll may do more like 5. I haven't decided. Anyway, if you are planning to do some lighthouse blocks in yours, you'll want to make sure you do have some extra fabric for that as well. And what's great about those lighthouse blocks, if you are planning to do them, the pieces aren't really big. For the size that I'm doing, I think there's a couple of them that are like 5.5-inch square size. There's a couple others that maybe the length is more like 7.5 inches. So it's not too big. So you can get away with using some leftover scraps. So if you have the Nantucket Summer, if that's what you're using, that would of course lend itself so nicely. If you have previous collections of hers or just other fabrics from your stash, you could really put together these blocks easily using what you have on hand. As far as the Galway Bay, I'm actually not using a layer cake. I obviously have lots of yardage of my Nantucket Summer, and I've gotten away from buying pre-cuts like that just because I do feel more limited. The way I quilt, I like the freedom to make changes, add things, make it larger. Things like what I did with the one for my sister, incorporating those lighthouse blocks. So I really like to feel the freedom and have the fabric on hand that I would need to make those changes spur of the moment. I tend to do that a lot. So layer cakes they don't leave a lot of room if you do mess up, which I do. And so it doesn't leave a lot of room if you do make mistakes. Have the fabric you would need to fix that. So I tend to buy fat quarter, maybe fat eighth, but I can tell you're going to need more width on this. So I would definitely, if it were me, I would be buying either yardage or fat quarters. I know it's more expensive. I'd rather get fewer collections and get enough of the ones that I really love. And so I do have the flexibility to make changes if I need to. However, if you do have a layer cake, it can work. I've made it. Matter of fact, the one that I made on the wall here is made with a layer cake. But again, I did not starch. This is one where I don't necessarily think you have to starch because the pieces are fairly large. It's not like you're dealing with tiny little pieces. You really can make this one easily without starching. I probably will starch mine just because I like to starch my fabrics, but you don't necessarily have to on this one, and on the previous ones that I've done, I did not starch. In addition to, if you are making this with a layer cake, in addition to that, you will need, they call it an accent fabric. What they're talking about is the brown that's used to make the boats. So you can see I've got that brown on there. So you might have something on hand that you can use. And I do recommend using a brown. I remember I wanted to use something lighter. I don't necessarily love the color brown, but I really felt like this pattern called for it. When I tried a couple of other options that were a little bit lighter in color, it just didn't give the same effect. I feel like the brown really makes the rest of the colors really pop. There's not enough of it to be the focal point, but it really does add. So I do recommend go ahead and get a pretty brown to use on your quilt. You don't need a lot of it. You just need, let's see, you just need 1/3 of a yard is what they say for your accent fabric. So it's not a lot, but that is when they're calling it an accent fabric, that's the brown. They also mention you'll need 3 yards of background. So if you're making it as is pictured, the 74-inch squared, you'll need 3 yards, and that includes your inner border of your background fabric. And I've thought about, I don't know that I will, but I've thought about the possibility of making this one in a color other than a white background. I thought about maybe going with more of a light blue and then using my other colors against it. So I'm thinking about doing that. Again, I've made this 3 times. I've always started with a white background, but I very well may end up deciding to go with a light blue color for my background. Then I would feel the freedom to use more of these heavy white background type fabrics against that. To make the houses and the different units. I'm still debating that, but I'm leaning toward using a light blue for my background. As you can see, I'm still making decisions for what I'm gonna do, which is pretty common for me. I don't necessarily go into it knowing all the details. I like to have the flexibility to be creative and kind of figure it out as I go along, which is really funny. I'm not like that in most other areas of my life. I'm much more type A. When it comes to making quilts, I like the flexibility to be creative. The last thing I was going to mention on this is they do have the border. So if you're purchasing fabric, you will need 1.25 yards to make the border the size listed. And it's a fairly wide border, but it really comes out nicely on this quilt. So during the next midweek video, I will go ahead and give you more details on the actual cutting, how many total pieces you'll need for each print, and I'll have those laid out so you can see that. So we'll definitely make a lot of progress with that, just getting everything cut during our next video. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and if you're enjoying these videos, I encourage you to share it with your friends, give us a like, and if you haven't already, subscribe so you don't miss a thing. I also encourage you, check us out on Facebook, Quilts Bloom at Dawn. We have both a page and a group. The group allows you to actually share your blocks, share your quilts that you're working on. So I encourage you to join that. Share what you're working on. I'd love to see pictures. So until next time, happy quilting.